Welcome, brave souls, to another dark chapter on Twisted Crime Tales. Tonight we step into a story from the Dominican Republic, a tale so grim and mysterious that even the shadows seem to whisper its secrets. This is a story of hope turned to horror, of a family once filled with promise, and of a man whose actions plunged their lives into a nightmare. In the soft glow of a flickering light, prepare to listen closely, for what you are about to hear will send shivers down your spine and stir the deepest corners of your imagination. Our story begins with a young woman named Reina. Born in 1985 in the Dominican Republic, she grew up with her mother and her kind stepfather, even as her heart stayed close to her biological father. People said Reina was bright, cheerful, and destined for great things. She learned much at school, even studying commerce and auditing before stepping into the world of medicine. But fate had other plans. At just 20 years old, Reina met Daniel Bowden, a man twice her age. Their romance, like a spark in the dark, soon grew into a wedding. From that union, 3 small lives were born: Daniela, Rahamid, and little Angela. For a time, it looked as though the family might overcome life's storms. Yet as years passed, harsh words and bitter arguments slowly tore the fragile bonds apart. After 8 long years, the couple separated, and the struggle for the children's care began. A legal battle ensued over who would care for the little ones, and despite whispers from experts that the children might be better off with their father, the judge gave custody of the 2 older children to Reina. The youngest, Angela, was sent to live with Daniel's sister. Amid the sorrow of the divorce and the clashing families, life took another dark turn. Reina's journey led her to a man named Victor Alexander Portoreal, known to some as Chamán Chakra, or the Metallico because of his strange dress and long dark hair. Victor was only 2 years younger than Reina, and soon the two fell in love. But what began as a gentle romance grew into something twisted, a dangerous mix of secrets, fears, and whispered warnings from those who cared for Reina. Tonight, we will unravel every painful detail of this case, from the early days of a hopeful life to the chilling night when everything changed. Gather close, dear viewers, and let the macabre details sink in as we journey through a tale where every smile hides a secret and every door may conceal a horror waiting to be revealed. Reina, who once shone with promise, built her life on fragile foundations. After the bitter end of her marriage with Daniel, the pain of endless legal battles over her children's future haunted her days. It was said that even when the courts fought over who would take care of Daniela and Rahamid, Reina's heart was torn by the constant push and pull of love and loss. Daniel claimed that the children had been with him sometimes, but in the end, the law forced Reina to care for the older 2 while little Angela was left in the arms of another relative. In the midst of this turmoil, Reina met Victor Alexander, a man whose quiet ways and unusual look made him both intriguing and unsettling. He was a mechanic by trade, fixing motorcycles with calm precision, yet his style, dressed in all black with hair that fell like a dark curtain, set him apart. Victor's eyes, always hidden behind shifting coloured contacts, held secrets that no one could guess. Despite the growing doubts whispered by Reina's family, the 2 began living together in a cramped room. With the children visiting in bits and pieces, sometimes with Reina, sometimes with family, the household was a puzzle of shifting pieces. As time wore on, Reina's determination to give her children a better life grew stronger. She found a paying job so that, with Victor's earnings, they might move to a larger home. And move they did, from a single crowded room to a small house with several rooms, where hope and fear mixed in the halls. But the new house brought with it a silent tension that would soon become impossible to ignore. Reina's family remained uneasy about Victor. They eyed him with suspicion because of his odd ways and the way he cared too closely for little Angela. His gentle hugs and soft words for her were meant to comfort, yet they left a bitter taste in the mouths of those who loved Reina. Rumours swirled. Some whispered that Victor had a daughter of his own, a little girl kept hidden from the world by a stern and unyielding mother. His behaviour, always quiet and unassuming in public, contrasted sharply with the dark energy that seemed to lurk behind his eyes. Trouble began when Reina lost her job in January, a loss that cast a long, cold shadow over the household. The family's financial problems deepened. Victor, once seen only as a quiet helper, now became a figure of worry. His changes in dress and behavior grew more frequent, and soon he began leaving the house in different clothes. Neighbors started to notice something was very wrong. A strange smell began to waft from the house, a smell that no one could quite place. A mix of decay and sorrow that seeped through the walls. Flies gathered in clusters on windows and doors, and even stray dogs were drawn to the scent, as if they knew a secret too terrible to speak aloud. On Saturday, the 3rd of February, Reina took her children one last time to her mother's house. There was a warm goodbye, a normal day with hugs and soft words. But as the sun rose the next day, something was amiss. Reina and her mother spoke briefly on the phone, and then, as if swallowed by the silence of the early morning, the calls stopped. Reina's mother grew worried. Hours turned into a day, and then another with no word from her daughter. Calls to Victor went unanswered. The household, once filled with the sound of daily life, became shrouded in an eerie stillness. By Wednesday, the 7th of February, a message finally reached Reina's mother through Victor. He said that a family friend had arranged a job for Reina. But even as these words tried to bring comfort, the neighborhood's anxiety only grew. Outside the new house, on every street corner and in every whisper, the residents spoke in low, fearful tones about the awful smell and the strange happenings. People speculated that perhaps a dead animal was hidden inside, or that old garbage had rotted away. But deep down, many felt that something far darker was at work. On the night of Sunday, the 4th of February, a terrible secret was set into motion. In the early hours of that fateful day, Victor carried out a plan so cruel it defied all reason. He entered the shared room where Reina slept, and with a fury that shattered the quiet, attacked her. Victor's hands and a cold, sharp blade ended Reina's life in a flurry of violence. The cruelty did not stop there. In a series of horrifying acts that no human heart should endure, Victor turned his brutality toward the children. He left Reina's body behind and sent the eldest daughter, Daniela, on a strange errand to buy cigarettes, a ruse to hide the unspeakable horror unfolding behind closed doors. Little Rahamid, a playful boy who had been in the garden, was drawn into Victor's nightmare. In the quiet of the small house, while innocents played in the open air, Victor attacked in a way so cruel that even the light of day could not erase its darkness. And then, in a room filled with the heavy silence of a shattered family, Victor gathered the bodies of Reina and her 2 daughters. With cold calculation, he locked them away in one room, as if trying to erase their cries from the walls. Not stopping there, Victor forced Rahamid to leave the house under the guise of an errand. He took him to a relative's home, instructing the kind aunt to care for him just for the day. But even there, the boy would soon learn that nothing was as it seemed. When his aunt asked what had happened, Rahamid, too small to understand the monstrous acts, whispered that something terrible had befallen his sister, that she was lost, and that punishment was coming. That night, as Rahamid lay asleep, unaware that the very next day would bring more heartbreak, Victor visited him once again. He explained in a soft, twisted tone that his mother was with his sister, that she had been found and that they must punish her. The horror of that night, filled with whispered commands and the chilling presence of death in the next room, would be etched forever in the silent memory of the house. Come Monday, after breakfast that held no promise of joy, Victor did the unthinkable. He returned to the home and, with a rope in hand, ended little Rahamid's life. He hung the boy in a room as if to erase all traces of hope and love that had once filled these walls. In a final cold act, Victor then made his way to the home of Reina's biological father. Under the guise of collecting a tablet, an object that belonged to the children, he slipped inside and with eerie calm stole away any remnant of the family's life. He then took the tablet to a pawn shop and exchanged it for a small sum of money, a gesture that seemed almost normal even as the darkness of his deeds loomed large. Victor's actions continued with disturbing regularity. On Wednesday, he was seen at the beach with a close friend named Crystal. a day after confessing the terrible crimes to another. Crystal later recalled how Victor spoke in a low voice about his deep problems and even admitted, with eyes distant and haunted, that he had done something unspeakably awful to his wife. The next day, when Crystal called him asking for news of Reina, Victor claimed she was not at home and made excuses about the state of the house. Even as suspicions grew in Crystal's heart, Victor's calm manner belied the monstrous acts he had committed. Soon, the terrible truth could no longer be hidden. When news spread that the police and firefighters had burst into the house on the 8th of February, the grim scene inside stunned everyone. 4 lifeless bodies lay where once a family had lived, a mother and her 3 precious children, their young lives cruelly cut short. Neighbours, horrified by the stench and the unnatural quiet, had finally raised the alarm. Victor was soon found on the 9th of February, lying in a park as if sleep had claimed him. Without resistance, he accepted that his fate was sealed. The forensic reports told a tale of a family that had suffered for days before the tragedy was discovered. Victor, with a calm confession, admitted to his terrible crimes. His words, along with the whispered accounts of neighbours and the painful recollections of witnesses, painted a picture of a man who had embraced evil with a quiet, terrifying certainty. As the investigation unfolded, theories abounded. Some said that Victor had been part of a dark cult, that his strange appearance was a sign of a secret life steeped in occult rituals. Yet the evidence told a more painful story. In a series of messages sent days before his capture, Victor admitted that his motive was tangled in anger and betrayal. Still, not everyone could forget the painful whispers of abuse. Testimonies emerged that hinted at even darker secrets. It was said that Victor had hurt little Angela, that the quiet smiles he shared with her masked terrible intentions. Reina herself, in her final moments and in her desperate messages, had warned of betrayal and of a man whose touch was not gentle, but a harbinger of pain. The agony of these revelations sent shockwaves throughout the community, leaving a trail of questions that no one could answer. In the trial that began in January 2019, every detail was laid bare for the nation to see. Neighbours, forensic experts, and even Victor's own friends spoke of the dual faces he wore. A kind, quiet young man by day, and a monster who lived in the dark corners of his own heart by night. His mother, once proud of her gentle son, could scarcely believe that the same boy who had once been so kind was now capable of such horror. The psychologist explained that Victor showed traits of a cold, emotionless soul, an antisocial personality with no remorse. They warned that even behind bars he might never truly feel regret, that his mind was as twisted as the acts he had committed. In court, Victor's confession was met with disbelief and sorrow. The judge, after hearing every heartbreaking detail, delivered the harshest punishment allowed by law: 30 years in prison. In the Dominican Republic, where sentences cannot be stacked for each crime, this was the maximum penalty, even for such a monstrous act. At 30 years old, when the crimes were committed, Victor would have the chance to walk free only when he reached the age of 60, a prospect that sent a chill through everyone who remembered the sweet faces of Reina's children. In the end, justice was served by the law, though it could never mend the shattered hearts of those who once loved Reina. Her mother, a grieving soul who had fought on her daughter's behalf in every public plea for justice, found little comfort in the verdict. Daniel, Reina's ex-husband too, was left to wonder if things might have been different if the children had been kept closer to him. Yet, in a cruel twist of fate, no one could bring back the smiles or the laughter that had once filled that humble home. Every detail of this tragic case, the strange smells, the eerie silence, the whispered confessions, remains a dark reminder that even in a world filled with hope, the seeds of horror can take root and blossom into nightmares. And now, as we reach the darkest heart of this tale, imagine standing in front of that small, silent house. The air is thick with a stench you cannot forget, a smell of decay that seeps into your bones. Neighbours speak in hushed tones, and every shadow seems to hide a terrible secret. In that house, where love once tried to flourish, Victor's actions turned a home into a tomb. Picture the chilling scene rooms that once held dreams now filled with silent, still bodies. The echo of footsteps in empty halls, a whisper of a life taken too soon. The man who had seemed so ordinary, so even kind in the daylight, revealed a face that could only belong to a monster. His confession, uttered as if reciting lines from a twisted play, shocked everyone who heard it. Every word was heavy with the weight of cruelty, each sentence a drop in a river of blood and sorrow. It was on that fateful day, as Victor calmly walked away from the house, leaving behind a scene no parent should ever have to imagine, that the truth finally broke free. His actions, a series of brutal, unthinkable events, drew the eyes of the nation. Questions were raised that could not be answered. How could a man with such a gentle smile hide a heart so dark? Why did he choose the ones he loved to hurt the most? And what would become of the small community that now lived in the shadow of his monstrous deeds? As the trial began and every painful detail was recounted in court, the tension grew to a fever pitch. Friends, neighbors, and even distant relatives watched in disbelief as Victor's past was unraveled, revealing hints of a life marked by cruelty and a mind that showed no sign of remorse. The courtroom became a stage where the unspeakable truth was laid bare, a truth that was as cryptic as it was horrific. In that moment, the legacy of Reina and her children transformed into a cautionary tale. A dark reminder that sometimes the worst monsters are not born in fairy tales, but live among us, hidden behind the mask of normalcy. As our story draws to a close, we are left with a silence that speaks louder than words, a silence echoing the lost laughter of a mother and her children. The case of Reina and her little ones is a stark reminder of the fragile line between love and horror, of how trust can be betrayed by the very people we invite into our lives. Here on Twisted Crime Tales, we remember their smiles, we grieve their absence, and we ask ourselves what drives a human heart to such depths of cruelty. Though justice has been served in the eyes of the law, the scars of that night remain etched in the memories of a community forever changed. Thank you for joining me on this dark journey. If you dare, subscribe and stay tuned for more tales that peel back the thin veneer of normalcy to reveal the twisted truths beneath. Until next time, remember, even the gentlest soul may hide a secret, and every shadow could be hiding a tale of terror.